Good afternoon. The Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust for February the 19th will be in order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the February 5th meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the February 5th meetings. Are there comments or questions, additions, corrections? Hearing none. Voting, please. Minutes are approved. Next item is a consent docket.
Move approval subject to individual consideration.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent docket. There's a number of items. Any of them need to be discussed separately? 13 items. No request for individual consideration. Voting, please. Consent docket's approved. Next item, items for individual consideration. The first three items are deferred until March the 5th. And the next item is an executive session. Do we need executive session?
I move we go into executive session on the issue.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to enter executive session. We will go into executive session when the meeting is over, and it's getting close to being over, because the next item is executive session.
I move we strike.
Lawsuit. We do not need one?
Yeah, move we strike.
Second.
Have a motion to strike item E. Next item is item from trustees. Any comments or questions? Pat, you and I had something we talked about at the council meeting that I said we could talk to Marcia about. Now I forgot what it was. It's a water thing. Yeah. I can't remember what it was. Okay, I can't remember. We're not going to do it.
One thing I point out, though, is that this particular agenda included a request for a consultant, what the cost of service.
Yes.
And Marcia, on another issue, how are we doing as far as Lake Hefner is concerned in the Canton release?
The Canton release ends at Lake Canton this Friday. The last of the water arrives the 26th here in Oklahoma City. That's the release travel time. So far, we're receiving more than 2/3 of the water that's released, which is very exciting for us, especially this time of year. The periodic rains that we've had during the release have helped a lot. Lake Hefner's at about 1189.5 today. That's and continuing to rise. That's about
10 feet down right now.
It is.
And so it was 17, and it's down 10 feet today.
Yes.
And we anticipate by the end of this we'll be down between 6.5 to 7.
Yes, probably 7. We're at about...
I'm hopeful on the rain tomorrow.
It's okay. We just argue about what full is.
It's 11:89.
Are you still planning to not have a recreational pass this year or season?
I've written to the boat, the lessees, to let them know that now would be a good time to get their boats out if they want to, and that it doesn't look good for the season. We're going to bring you an item that talks about that and how we'll pull that trigger. We typically sign people up in April with the season starting in May, and my only reason to delay a little bit is just to see whether the weather changes.
I was going to say, the minute you tell people it's time to move their boats, the weather will break.
And that would work I would do that and take that flack.
Is that all it takes? I thought it was more complicated.
But thank you. The lake levels in the southeast we've had some rain. There's no material improvement. They continue to decline as we pump into Lake Draper. Lake Draper is substantially higher now than it was this time last year, so we're making progress preparing for the summer.
What's our goal elevation in Draper?
Lake Draper today is 1173.5.
Okay.
And we would think full is about 87.
Is that our intent to pump to get to 87?
Our intent, no,
I think it's based upon the rainfall.
Okay.
Rainfall in the southeast. I think if the
Gotcha.
lakes are down in the southeast, we're going to have to balance that a little
Yeah.
bit. If the lakes get full in the southeast,
Right.
then I think we'll have more latitude to pump more.
we're very fortunate that we have that ability.
Right, okay, I see.
Once again, recreation's probably impacted, but we're pleased to have more water in Draper because it's such a long distance from our other water supply lakes.
If we get around normal rainfalls this spring, those lakes should be close to coming back to full down in the southeast. And
I was gonna say, tend to-
if you can tell us whether that's going to happen or not, that'd be helpful.
Well, no, I just, I knew we were pumping, and we had the ability to pump up, and I just didn't know kind of what our plans were, obviously dependent upon the rain, and we all hope we get some help there.
We have, for example, we do develop strategies for how we're going to pump because we know that there's a significant energy cost associated with that. And we're looking forward to participating in OG&E's energy conservation program, cutback program for peak hour, for example. What I've told staff is that this year having enough water in town is going to be more critical than, unfortunately, making much desired savings on power. But we'll be working through that kind of as the drought progresses or goes away. So otherwise, in terms of staff reports, it may not be my turn to talk. We are continuing to see a good number of new connections in the system. The daily average water use in January, the growth in that use was about typical for the growth in our system, or a little bit less. So overall, we're kind of on a good status quo.
Any other questions about the status report?
No, I think it's important to point out, though, that if you take a look at the storage volume that's out there, at this point, if you add the January 13 numbers for storage out there, and what we've got in acre feet, it's almost 300,000 acre feet of water that's still out there on this. Now, we can't take all that water out of all the lakes. There's going to be some minimum parts of each of those lakes that aren't going to be there. But it's still, 300,000 with no rainfall. You still got a couple of years' supply left out there. Now, those lakes would be in horrendous shape, and there's no more rainfall in 2 more years. But that's kind of where you're at. We're in the 3rd year of a drought and still have a significant volume of water out there. Is it impacting the recreational ability on every lake we have? Absolutely. There's no doubt about that it is at this point in time. But we need to remember that reservoirs, part of that word is reserve, and reservoirs are to be filled when rainfalls are good, and they're to be water taken out during times of less rainfall or in drought. And we're clearly in a period of drought. It's the most significant drought the state has seen in 1954, and so every 50 years or so, you're going to have a situation where the lakes are going to go down. We've been fortunate, quite frankly. If you take a look at the rainfall, we've been in quite frankly, a period over the last 20 years of fairly high rainfall events, if you could take a look at that comparison to the history of Oklahoma.
What in January this year, a wet month compared to January normal?
And February is shaping up to be very much so also.
That's a good sign.
It helps. It definitely helps. I've handed out information about your bond sale. The refunding sale went very well. Our TIC is 3.009%. All-in cost is about 3.23. She said,
On page 2 of your handout, in red ink, it says underwriter's discount, cost of issuance, 4.61% underwriter's discount.
Any questions about the bond?
I want to congratulate staff. AAA rating. Very good sale. Significant reduction for our ratepayers in terms of pension costs and existing bonds costs. So we work well done.
congratulations to you trustees and Mr. Chairman. It's very exciting.
Any other questions or comments? Next item is the Water Conservation Program development.
So we continue to work on all fronts. We had a presentation to the City Council on February the 5th. They mentioned indoor conservation as well. There are many programs in the United States that include incentives for indoor conservation, changing out of fixtures, for example. We're pursuing those things. There's a program called WaterSense at EPA that's kind of a clearinghouse for efficient fixture ratings and rebate listings of rebates across the country. So we're pursuing that information to bring back to you with recommendations, along with some more water industry information about those programs and how they work. We're developing scheduling options for outdoor use restrictions, should they be necessary. We're working on some minor clarifications and some ordinances that are related to this. And then the OSU Extension Service is holding a citizens meeting this week while we're internally and with consultants working on web enhancements to get information readily available to folks. I'm moving on all fronts, and I think at your next meeting we'll have some things to bring back to you for possible decision making.
Do you think it's going to be possible to have this meeting that's set for this week? I personally have a conflict, and the one that's is it set this week, or is it whenever it's set for? The one we got set with OSU people coming down? I have a conflict, I won't be able to go, but would it be possible to have at least one more of those, perhaps one in the south part of Oklahoma City, where so people might have an opportunity, a little more outreach on it? My main concern is that I don't want this in any way to be perceived as a rationing program. I want this, it's my view, and I hope it's the view of everybody else, it is a conservation program, and it's not temporary, it's permanent. We don't, we're talking about every other day watering, although we think that's marginal savings, I think that's going to be the rule. I mean, that's my opinion. That ought to be the rule. We know that you don't need to water Bermuda grass every day, and so it's a waste of water to do it. We just need to make that the rule. It's not a rationing program, it's just common sense. And
I think fundamentally that a lot of the residential watering systems aren't very efficient. They have a lot of water in the streets, so if you're only doing it every other day, you have less going on.
at least half the water that won't be running in the street.
We're just saving people money.
I'm just trying to figure out a way that we can, through these policies, to make sure that people understand that this is a new paradigm. This is not. We've been talking about this for 2 or 3 years about the impact that this has on our suppliers on the ends from Lake Atoka to Lake Canton to McGee Creek, and I don't think it has. I frankly think that the comments that I've heard in the press frequently about other people criticizing this trust for not planning is more a condemnation of them, because the fact that we have the ability to take water from Canton is an indication we've been planning for this for a long, long time. The fact that they weren't prepared for us to exercise that right is an indication they haven't been doing very much planning. So I think we need to be aggressive about what we're doing, but I think it's what we ought to be doing on a permanent basis. You look around the world. I got a fax today from Councilwoman Salyer, who's in India, and she faxed me a sheet of paper that she saw she got from a hotel room, I think, and it's the rules in India. It talks about when you turn off the water, when you're brushing your teeth, and shaving mugs. You don't need to fill them all the way up. I mean, little bitty things, and all those things are, but incrementally they could make a difference. And so I want to make sure that all our public relations, all our comments are not talking about rationing. They're talking about conservation and permanent use of it.
Mr. Chairman, our city clerk reminded me of an issue that came up this morning that I bring up the Water Trust because it was a contract with the Water Trust to allow the model airplane issues to go on. And I was curious if anybody mentioned that a prohibition perhaps against television cameras being mounted in these model airplanes where they would essentially become drones.
That's what it was.
But we did research that following the conversation at the City Council, and what we found is that cameras are allowed, but only for purposes of the competition. It's a specific part of the style of competition that they may use cameras, again, as a part of the scorekeeping, and I might let Lisa Hubble help me with this. They are following the recreational organization's standards, though, when they do that.
That's right. The Academy of Model Aeronautics, they have rules and regulations in relation to cameras on the model airplanes. They call it like first view system, which helps them actually to operate the model airplane. But I don't have the specifics as far as how high they go, but I do know they have to stay within the FAA rules for those types of model airplanes.
My concern is, privacy concern.
There had been some reports of those TV cameras in drones or model airplanes essentially being misused. And I just would hope that we would provide some protection against our citizens their privacy being invaded by these drones.
Yes, sir. We'll follow up.
Okay, thank you.
And what brought it to mind was there was a TV report, I think last week, about a person using model airplane drones essentially for public safety purposes on fires and accidents, which makes good sense. However, it's a short step from there to looking at somebody's backyard, monitoring what they're doing.
Agreed.
Anything else? I think we need to go into executive, or actually, are there citizens to be heard? If not, we'll go into executive session and be back.